Hey guys, Dennis back with a brand new video. So today we're going to be talking about winterizing your camper. This is really easy. You can do it yourself. You can save yourself probably a couple $100 and avoid having to tow your camper all the way to an RV store and then pick it back up, bring it back home and store it for the winter. I have some really good tips and tricks. Make sure to stick through to the end. Let's get into it. Some things that you're going to want to have on hand before you start this process is if you have an air compressor, that's great. You don't necessarily need one, but if you do have one, pick up one of these fittings. This actually fits into the end of the airline, and this will screw into where your city water connection is on the outside of your camper. Now, the next one is this RV and marine antifreeze. Now, there's a bunch of different brands out there. This SuperTech, this is actually from Walmart. It's $4 a jug. There is Prestone. There's some other brands that you can pick up at the RV stores as well. But this stuff seems to work pretty good for me. And then you're gonna need a screwdriver or some kind of drill driver with a Phillips bit or whatever bit that you need to remove the access panels to get to your water pump and other things. All right, so the very first step, you want to make sure that you have nothing in either your black or your gray tank. After our last camping trip at the dump station, I made sure to rinse everything out. I flushed the black tank, used the little thing down through the toilet and cleaned everything out in there. I used the actual black tank flush that's on the side of the camper here. I let it sit for a few minutes, made sure there was nothing even dribbling out. So that's step number one. So the next step is where your holding tank drain is. You want to open that up. So that's right here. There's not much water in there. I didn't have enough time at the dump station to empty this whole thing because it is 30 gallons. So we're gonna let this run out and drain entirely. And then also you wanna find your low point drains for the hot and cold water. So that's actually gonna drain all of the water that's left in the lines, well, most of it anyways, for all of your fixtures, your tub, anything like that. All right, now we're inside the camper. After the holding tank is totally drained, there's no water in the system, you need to locate, if it's the first time winterizing your camper, you need to locate where the water pump is because that is where we're gonna be adding the antifreeze. So all you have to do to figure out where it is just flip your water pump on and listen for where the sound's coming from. So I know that it's actually located under this couch here, but if you're not sure where yours is, just turn that switch on and that'll help you locate where the noise is coming from. I need to remove the front plate on the bottom of my couch here, and it's gonna vary depending on the camper that you have. This is a KZ Spree. It's like a 2009 or something, but all I'm doing is I'm removing these little fabric covers on all the screws, and then we're gonna remove the screws and we'll be able to see what the water pump looks like. Now this is where that drill driver or screwdriver will come in handy. Your fasteners may vary. These are just Phillips. Now once we have all of our fasteners out, we can remove this front cover here, and when I do, you'll notice that the water pump is right there. Now there's some things we need to do here. There's some valves that we need to shut on the hot water heater tank before we start feeding our antifreeze in. Now some pumps will actually come with a siphon hose already attached to it. Others I've seen where you can actually disconnect the water inlet hose on the pump with like a quick disconnect, and the camper normally comes with an extra hose that will fit in that spot to put the antifreeze into the system. So as you can see, the blue line here, this actually has two different valves on it here. All right, this one right here was our siphon hose. That valve is shut, as you can see, and there's different style valves, so it's the position of your valve is going to actually differ depending on which design that you have. But this is our inlet from the holding tank. Okay, so we want to make sure we close that. This tank here with the insulation on the back of it, that is actually our hot water tank and heater assembly. If you look on the top, there isn't a valve here, it tees off, but there is a valve on the bottom here. And I'll show you from the top side, right there. So right now that is allowing cold water from the system to come into the bottom of the tank. Right, this is bypassed right here, this centerpiece from the top to the bottom. It's allowing it to heat the water. So that red line coming off the top here is the hot water from the hot water heater that runs down into the belly of the camper. So that runs off to all of the sinks and the shower and the outdoor shower. So we don't want to get any antifreeze in the heater itself. That's no good because some of the antifreezes actually are corrosive to metal. So what we want to do to bypass and prevent any of the antifreeze that we're going to be sucking into the system from going into the hot water heater, we need to close this bottom valve here. So that's just a matter of putting that straight up and down, just like that. Shutting that valve will keep the pump from actually discharging water into the hot water tank. You just want to make sure that the valves that are on the hot water tank are isolating the tank from the actual water pump system. All right, now as you can see, our holding tank is actually just dripping now, so we're gonna leave that open. I know some people actually leave that open throughout the winter. I just don't want bugs getting in there, so I'm just gonna leave it open through the end of today, and then I'll close it up. So now that we have the hot water heater isolated, we're gonna open up our cover on the outside. We're gonna set that to the side. Now, hot water heaters vary by camper and manufacturer, but this one is an electric and gas unit, and I do have an anode on here. If you don't have an anode, typically you'll have a plastic plug, and what you wanna do is actually open that up or remove the anode to get any remaining water that's in the bottom of the hot water heater tank out of the camper. So let's do that now. We're gonna drain our hot water heater now. The most important step on this, and I don't want you to get injured, you wanna make sure that you hit your safety release up here. Pull that up, and that's actually going to release any pressure that's in the tank. It'll drain out of the top here if it's full all the way, and that'll prevent you from having a mess when you go to open up either the drain or pull the anode out. So there's nothing there. I'm just gonna close that now, and then we're gonna take the anode out. I already loosened it up a little bit, but you'll see a bunch of water coming out. And now's actually a really good time to check the condition of your anode. You'll see this one still has quite a bit of life left on it. If yours is looking a little raggedy, I mean, this does have some like calcium deposits on it and stuff, but if yours looks like a pencil instead of this like 3/4 or 1/2 inch diameter anode, it's probably a good time to research what the part number is and replace it. There's a lot of water coming out of here. This hot water tank, I think, holds about 6 gallons, and what you can do is you can hit that safety release again, and that'll actually let some air in there, and that'll help that drain out. We're done draining. I closed the blow off the pressure relief valve on the top here, and I cleaned off the anode, and I removed all of the old Teflon tape from here. So we need to put some new Teflon tape on here. So we're just gonna put like maybe 2 or 3 wraps on here, and then we can reinstall it. Any like minor residual amount of water in the hot water heater is really nothing to worry about, but you just don't want to go leaving gallons of water in there over the winter time, because you're gonna end up having to replace your hot water heater. All right, and then we'll tighten this up. So one thing to note, if you do have your plug connected to your house, if you have your camper connected throughout the winter for whatever reason, and you have a hot water heater that is gas and electric, you want to make sure that the switch for the electric element on there is off. So you don't want to run the risk of those elements coming on with no water in the tank. So it's kind of hard to see, but there is a little switch down in here, a little toggle switch, off and on. So on is down, off is up. So I'm just gonna make sure that that's off. So we're all done in the hot water heater. Like I said, make sure your pressure relief is closed again, and then we'll just put our side cover on and we're done with this part. For our next step, this is where the air compressor comes into play. Now I have this set on 40 PSI. You probably don't want to have this thing, you know, this thing fills up to like 150. You definitely don't want to charge the lines in your camper with 150 PSI. You will damage stuff. And 40 is pretty good. I have my pressure relief valve when we go camping, when you're using city water, set for 45. So this guy on 40 should be good enough. Now we're going to use this fitting. I'll drop a link to this down in the description. This basically goes in to the end of the air chuck on your hose from the compressor right here. We'll plug it into there, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna connect that to our city water connection right there. Now you wanna make sure you have all of your faucets and any other fixtures and whatnot off before you go to do this. Okay, and then we're simply, after we're verified that we only have 40 PSI, all we're gonna do is we're just gonna connect this right to here. Just like that. You hear some noises, and what we're doing is we're actually basically simulating the water pump right now. We're adding pressure into the system, but we're not adding water into the system. Now that we have our system charged with that 40 PSI of air, you wanna get yourself a bucket. I actually forgot to mention this, but you don't want the water that you're getting out of your system to go back into your gray tank, right? We already drained our gray tank at the end of the camping season. So I'm gonna open up the cold side, And that air that we're feeding in from the compressor is acting like water pressure. It's gonna force all of the remaining water that's in the line out of the line. Now we wanna just let this run and get most of the stuff out, and then we'll repeat the same for the hot side. All right, we'll do the same for the hot. And then just keep in mind that you may have to, if your compressor isn't plugged in, you may have to run an extension cord to it just to make sure that you maintain the pressure in there. All right, now we're over at the bathroom sink. Obviously, I'm not gonna get that gigantic bucket in here, so we're just gonna use something else here. And we just wanna make sure we get the majority of the water out of the lines. We wanna do the same thing in our shower here. You can see there was some water in there, so that's good that we got that out. All right, so the toilet. And then we have this outdoor shower. We want to make sure we don't forget about this, because this is the one that will always break on you if you forget about it. And we're gonna leave this open because we're gonna put antifreeze through this also. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit my low point drains one more time with it pressurized to get anything else that's remaining in the system out. All right, and after we're sure that we got all of the water out of the system, or most of it, what we can do is we can just pull our hose off like that. We'll remove this fitting here and put our plug back on. So that's a majority of the actual hard work to winterizing the water system. So now we're gonna go back into the camper. We're gonna take some of the antifreeze. I'm gonna show you how to introduce it into the system and get all the lines purged with the antifreeze. All right, now we're gonna get into the part where we're actually introducing the antifreeze into the system. So what I like to do is I like to get a clean 5-gallon bucket, and we'll open this up, and this will just prevent me from having to keep swapping between bottles. Just dump this whole thing in here. You wanna make sure you have some paper towels too. Now, how much antifreeze you need is gonna depend on the size of your camper. Every camper is different, unless it's the same model as this one. So we'll start with 2. And if we don't end up using the other 2, we'll just save them for next year. So we have our siphon tube into the bucket. We're gonna come in here now, and where the siphon tube connects to the water pump, we're gonna open that valve. Now the valve that's going down to the holding tank that we drained, that one's shut. So when the pump comes on, instead of trying to pull from the holding tank, it's gonna pull from the siphon tube instead. Now that we have that set up, we're gonna come over to our control unit over here by the bathroom sink. And we're gonna turn on our water pump. And what that's gonna do, it's gonna start pulling that antifreeze into the system. We're gonna wait for the pump to shut off so we know it's up to pressure. And then we'll go to each of the fixtures and we'll purge it through. Now, talking about this particular antifreeze, this is good down to -50 Fahrenheit. We never get that cold here up in the Northeast, you know, maybe -10 with the wind chill. Make sure whatever you're buying is compatible with the winter temperatures that you expect to see. All right, now we're gonna go back to the bucket here because any remaining water that's in the line I want out until I start seeing the pink antifreeze coming out of the fixture here. So we're gonna turn this on. And this stuff is gonna wanna splatter everywhere. So just be careful when you initially turn it on. So we're gonna let it run for a minute. Sometimes you'll see it turn pink and then it'll turn clear and then it'll turn pink again. So we're just gonna let it run a little bit. Okay, that's good, that's the cold side. Let's do the hot. All right, we know we're good there. And what we'll do afterwards is we'll go around and we'll pour some antifreeze into the P-traps, and that'll keep any water that it's definitely, I know that's definitely inside of the plumbing for the drain system. It'll have some antifreeze in it to keep that from freezing up. Let's wait till we get a nice good flow out of there. It's consistently pink. All right, we're good there. And then we also want to make sure that we get the shower head. You can actually see the line turning pink there. That's looking good already. We'll do the hot side. All right, and then lastly inside, we're gonna do the toilet. Now, we're just gonna lightly do this so we don't get sprayed. So we got a good amount in here. I'm actually gonna drop some of this down into the black tank. That's not gonna hurt anything, okay? And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fill this up couple inches and we'll actually let this sit. And what this is going to do, it's actually going to keep the O-rings on that flapper wet throughout the winter, and it'll keep them from drying out. And then last but not least, we're going to come back out to the shower outside, and we're going to turn this on and get this all flushed out too. Now, a couple of things we want to do next is we want to pour some antifreeze down into the P-traps. And that'll keep any water that's in there from freezing up over the winter time. So we'll do our kitchen sink, we'll hit the bathroom sink, and then we'll do our tub. Okay, now lastly, we want to make sure that we take our siphon tube out of the antifreeze. Okay, we'll shut off our water pump, and then what we can do is we can close that valve on the siphon tube. So we're gonna shut that right here. Okay, then we're gonna grab a paper towel and we'll pull that siphon tube out of the bucket. We'll lay it down, make sure nothing's coming out of there. Now, some of these actually will have a plug on the end. This one actually does not have a plug. I'll probably add one on, and just to keep anything that may be remaining in the hose from kind of leaking out. All right, guys, so 2 gallons exactly to be able to purge the system, get the antifreeze through all the water lines and all of the fixtures inside and the outside shower, the toilet and everything, and to be able to pour some down the drains to protect the P-traps on the tub, the kitchen sink, and the bathroom sink. All right, now that we have our water system winterized, I want to go over a few more tips and tricks that are going to help you to make sure that everything is out of your camper, nothing will be damaged, you're not leaving behind liquids and stuff like that. So first step is the refrigerator. You may think that you can just leave the refrigerator doors shut at the end of the season. You know, the refrigerator's off, it's all fine and dandy. Well, if there's a difference in temperature between the outside and the inside of the refrigerator, you run the chance of having some condensation in there and having that turn into like a mold factory. You do not want that, so I'm gonna show you what I do. The refrigerator itself, if you have the Norcold like I do, this is a very common refrigerator used in travel trailers, and it typically latches in like that, right? So you can leave your doors open like this, make sure it's set to off, but you can also take these little locks here for when you're traveling and extend them out. So by leaving those out, that leaves a little air gap and it allows the outside temperature and the inside temperature of the fridge to be equalized. So that'll prevent any issues with mold or anything like that arising in there. Make sure your pantry's empty, right? This camper is, I've pretty much rodent-proofed this camper on the bottom side of the camper, so I don't really get mice in here anymore, but you don't want to leave any food items or anything like that inside of here. Like, I'll leave paper towels in here, nothing's gonna get inside of here, but that's that. All right, a couple other things. I like to put some paper towels in the base of all of the sinks to prevent any of the antifreeze liquid from dripping down and possibly staining the sinks. Now, I'll move the kitchen faucet spout over the top of the drain just so it can actually drip into there, but as you can see, I winterized the water system yesterday and there was some drippage. So instead of staining our nice new sink pink, we can just put that little paper towel right there and we'll be good. And we'll do the same thing in the tub and the bathroom sink. All right, so now we're gonna talk about electronics. Now, obviously your microwave stays in the camper all season, right? So the question is, do we leave the TV in here throughout the winter? I think it'll be fine. What do you guys do? Let me know down in the comments below if you take your TV in and store it inside your house during the winter months or not. I'm probably gonna remove it and stick it inside either the garage or in the basement. Also, another thing, battery powered devices like TV remotes. We all know what happens when we leave batteries in these things for an extended period of time without using them. The batteries tend to leak and the contacts inside get all messed up and you end up having to buy a new remote because it's all jacked up. So I would recommend taking batteries out of remotes, smoke detectors, any kind of battery powered lanterns or LED lights, and we'll just store them in a tote inside the house until next camping season. All right, so here's one that you may not even think of, coffee pots, right? We all love coffee in the morning while we're camping, and a lot of times you have some residual water that sits down inside the heating element inside of here in the tubing, especially on Keurig machines. My mom actually was telling me at our last camping trip to bring my coffee pot in because she had left a Keurig in her camper and the water expanded inside of the heating chamber in the Keurig because it's really hard to get any extra water out of it, and it actually damaged the coffee pot. She had to buy a new one. So no matter what type of coffee pot you have, Keurig or just a regular drip machine like this, I would definitely recommend bringing inside for the winter. So what I normally do for all the chemicals and cleaning supplies, stuff like that, I get one of these totes and I'll just put it in there. So you don't want to leave any of this stuff, your gray water, your black water treatment, any kind of hand soaps, even these little porta pack treatments for your black tank, laundry detergent, Anything that's liquid and has the possibility of freezing, definitely bring inside. So we want to make sure all of our roof vents are completely closed. So if there is a layer of snow up there, it's not going to be melting and coming down in through that partially open vent. Windows too, especially these crank out style, you want to make sure that they're cranked in all the way and sealed up nice and tight for the winter time. Another one, first aid kits. These tend to have like bacitracin, kind of first aid cream, stuff like that, Neosporin. We don't want to leave that out during the winter time, so we'll toss that in the tote too. All right, so now that we've wrapped up winterizing our plumbing and grabbing and removing everything from the inside of the camper that could get damaged during the winter, we want to make sure we close all our vents, like I mentioned. We're going to shut off all of the lights, and then we're going to go to the outside. We're going to check our outside storage compartments, make sure we grab any liquids or anything that can freeze during the winter time. And then the most important last step is you want to remove the battery and store it on the inside so it does not get damaged during the winter. So let's go do that now. All right, so I know I have some chemicals and stuff down in here, like slide out lubricant, stuff like that. And it's actually already in a tote. So I'll just pull this whole thing out of here and we'll just store that right inside. All right, one other thing you wanna make sure that you do is secure your propane tanks. All right, so we're gonna talk about removing the battery now. While I do have a disconnect switch on here, so if I don't want the smoke detectors or the gas detector or anything like that running off of the battery when I'm not using the camper, I can just kill that and that'll disconnect the battery from the system. But we want to make sure we bring this battery in for the winter. So the connectors on here are going to probably vary based on your camper, but these are 9/16 nuts on here, and I'm just going to use a wrench and we'll remove this. And it's that easy to disconnect your battery. It is a little bit heavy, but we'll just pull it out of there like that. And all we're gonna do is just put our cover back on. We'll tuck the wires in here real nice. We'll just leave this just like this. And that's about it. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video. Super simple to winterize your camper. So follow my steps and my tips and tricks. Let me know down in the comments below if you have some of your own that I missed in this video. Save some money, do it yourself. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content, and maybe check out some of my other videos. Till next time.